Folks, let me share with you what we're going to experience over the next 40 minutes or so. And in fact, let me give you what we're probably not going to be able to do, and then I'll share with you what we will. And what I mean by that is there's so much information and content to talk about when we're diving into this topic. I mean, the psychology of selling is something that takes quite a long time to understand and implement and grasp. We're not going to get into the macro aspect of psychology today because there's just not enough time for that. But I'm certainly available to dive into that with any one of you at a later point in time. But for today, we're going to dive into what's essential about understanding how to utilize psychology. And I think you'll walk away with one or two nuggets, if not three nuggets, that you'll be able to utilize immediately. One of the things that's important that I've learned after doing 35 years of training, and I'll get into that in a minute or two, is that not everything that you hear, not everything you see, and if you are someone who's involved and pursues personal development and sales skill development and skill development, then hopefully and I believe that you are because you're on this webinar, but hopefully you are pursuing knowledge and information and resources on an ongoing basis. Well, if you've done that, then you know that not everything you read, not everything you watch, not everything you attend, not all of it ever resonates, right? There are bits and pieces, but there are usually one or two things, just one or two things that you walk away with and you have that aha moment, right? Where you say, oh boy, I can take this to the bank. There's one little nugget. I could put this to work right away and it could change my business. That's what you're going to experience in the next 40 minutes or so, is that one, two nuggets, maybe three, that you'll walk away with and say, you know, that makes a lot of sense. I'm going to implement it immediately. But here's what I'll caution you. I'll caution you that if you're not going to take notes, you're going to miss it. So I believe note takers are money makers. Note takers are money makers. And there's no way to absorb this content, even though we're going to have it available as a recording. I get all that, but it's nothing like taking information fresh when it's given, so that your brain can start processing it immediately and figuring out, as it will, how do I incorporate this into my daily routine now? Don't wait around for the recording. Note takers are money makers, and money makers are impact makers as well. So ultimately, if you want to make an impact, be a good note taker. Okay, so let me share with you a little bit about my story, and then you could sort of figure out why I am where I am and why I've learned what I've learned, that you're not going to have to go through 35 years of it. You can learn in the next 35, 40 minutes, at least enough to get things going. Okay, I started out really in sales, not knowing it was sales. When I was 13 years old, I grew up in a place called Spanish Harlem, New York City, and Spanish is called el barrio, is the ghetto. It's the Spanish ghetto. I grew up in the early 70s, mid 70s, when there was plenty of opportunity with in the environment to get into trouble. And there's certainly no shortage of ways that you can make money, just not legally. So there's no shortage of opportunities that way. Thankfully, I had good parents that didn't allow me and my brothers astray. And we were pretty tight. We were poor, but we were tight as a family. It wasn't until I was 13 years old that I had the entrepreneurial bug take a hold of me, that I began to understand that there's opportunities out there that I can grab a hold of if I'm willing to do the work and I'm willing to learn. What I mean by that is I live not too far from Central Park, towards the northern end of Central Park. Hopefully you have been to New York and you've been to Central Park. Well, on Saturdays and Sundays, the softball fields, the baseball fields are filled with guys that are drinking beer, the kids are drinking soda, and they leave those bottles and cans on the ground. Well, I picked that up early on at 13 years old. I picked up on the fact that if I go back to the park on Saturday and Sunday and grab my big hefty leaf bag, the black hefty leaf bags, and I fill those bags with bottles and cans, then I'm going to go trade those bottles and cans in across the street from where I lived at the supermarket for a nickel. And that, for me, began my entrepreneurial development. I could not believe that people in the park were walking right by bottles and cans. I couldn't believe it. Me and my brother couldn't believe it. But here's why we we saw what they didn't see. Those people saw poop. I saw profit. I didn't see bottles and cans on the ground. I saw nickels. 1 nickel, 10 cents, 15. And as I started to look around Saturdays and Sundays, I just realized how much money was on the ground that people were leaving, but they didn't see what I saw. Their perception was different from my perception, so they missed it. Those nickels, those bottles and cans paid for my Adidas sneakers back in, we're talking about the 70s now, the Jordache jeans, the Pumas, all the cool kids, the Walkmans, all the cool kids, the cool things the kids had that we couldn't afford. I went out and I found them on my own because of those precious bottles and cans. By the time I was 16, I was doing tax returns for people. As a 16-year-old in a neighborhood, I self-taught myself how to do simple tax returns. And I did tax returns for people at age 16 in the neighborhood for 25 bucks. And then from there on in, I developed a personal training business. I was a personal trainer, had my own personal training business. By the time I was 18 and 19, in New York City, running around training people, picking up 50 bucks for an hour. Back then, that was pretty good money. We're talking, at that point now, 1990s, when I started to, 1980s. And then I got involved in financial services, and then I got involved in acting. And along the way, I've been involved in a profession, a career that had to do with me persuading another person, influencing another person, convincing another person to my point of view. All along, way before I got to the academic part of it, in college and beyond, I was already doing and utilizing psychology. I just didn't know it. So I've learned this skill, not only academically in college and beyond, but in the trenches where it matters the most. By the time I got to college, I had already developed the outward skill set of using psychology. Think about this, guys. How could a 16-year-old convince an adult to let them do their taxes? Because I had to learn the right approach. And again, instinctively, I use psychology. Now I teach it. And let me share something with you about that. If you think that you're going to excel in performing the best way that you can and getting as much compliance and agreement as you can from another person where they can say yes to you. And it's not even sales, guys. It could be beyond sales. It doesn't have to be the transactional component of a product exchange. It could be your kids saying yes. As Linda said earlier, we're selling something to somebody just about every day, right? It doesn't have to be a particular product or service. It could be an opportunity. To get someone to say yes, there is psychology behind that. And if you go about it raw, and maybe some of you have had some success raw, but how much better can you be understanding how to incorporate the art of psychology, persuasion, influence to help you convey your message, your opportunity, your service and product or goods to someone else even more effectively, easily, so they can say yes more often. Wouldn't that be the end game, right? Everybody wins. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And I want to start by saying this. You have to understand the 5 musts of sales psychology success. What I mean by that is there's just some things you can't skip. I can dive into the weeds of psychology all day long, but if I don't address these musts, I'm missing a big piece and I'm shortchanging your ability to absorb this and be successful. So let's talk about the first must. If you're going to appreciate your success to the degree that it can be achieved, then you must take an honest personal assessment. And I want to do that right now. One of the things, guys, as a side note, one of the things that people appreciate me as a trainer, as an action tainer, is that I pull no punches. I mean, I go right forward. And people appreciate that straightforward, honest. And I guess that's because I'm from New York and I was raised in that environment. I mean, what you see is what you get. I don't pull any punches. And I think people appreciate that straightforwardness, that transparency when I speak and train and talk at their events. And this is one of those times. It's about being on point and honest with yourself. We're going to do that right now. Very quickly. Here's what I want you to take, and you don't have to give a verbal answer. Do it in your own mind, or maybe raise your hand or in the chat box. Put the number in the chat box. But I want you to rate yourself from 1 to 10. 1 to 10, let's rate yourself. Here's the first step in taking a personal, honest assessment. Rating yourself. And maybe you've done this in the past, and maybe you haven't done it. Maybe you don't want to know the answer. But if you're serious about success and incorporating psychology to the degree that you can become even greater at your craft, at your business, at whatever you're promoting, then you have to take an honest assessment. So let's not mess around with this. 1 to 10. 10 is I am proficient, efficient, and I'm at that confident mastery level. That's a 10. 1 is I'm comatose. I mean, I'm hurt. So if I'm comatose, that means I'm barely breathing. And guys, if there's background noises, because I think they're lawn people that cut my grass, I apologize for that. But comatose is number 1. It means you're hurt. So between 1 and 10, I want you to rate yourself in one area: your effectiveness to convince, to persuade, to influence another person to say yes more often. How good are you at that skill development? There's many skills that you have to be successful in selling, but in that particular sales, that particular arena, how effective are you in getting someone to say yes? How effective are you in utilizing psychological tips and tricks and tactics to persuade someone better? I want you to go ahead and put it in the chat box. As you're putting it in, if you're honest now, if your number is anything below 6, you are shortchanging your success. And that's the first component of having change occur. Honest assessment. If you're 6 and below, you're hurt. You could be 10xing your success just by learning a few things. If you're 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, a few tweaks I'm sure you can make, because we can all get better, but you are a little better than most. And now, by the way, how do you even begin to assess that honestly? Here's how you assess it. Are you where you want to be in your sales experience? Are you where you want to be in your success? How many times have you left the table frustrated? I don't mean the table physically, I mean the proverbial table. How many times have you left the proverbial table frustrated because you could have done better? You know that you missed a few things and you thought you nailed it, you didn't nail it, and you just know, what did I do wrong? How many times have you had that experience? Right? Well, all of that can be mitigated by you understanding how the other person thinks. This is why honest assessment. If I'm 1, 2, 3, and 4, I gotta honestly say I'm pretty lousy. I need to get better. Until you arrive at that point in place and time where you admit I need to get better, you'll continue to just operate at a novice experience, and you'll rob yourself, or you'll rob all the other people who could benefit from what you're offering. Second thing, the second must, you have to care, and you must believe. You must care for the people that you are sitting in front of, because they pick up on that. I'm going to talk more about that in a few minutes. You must truly care about the people you must truly care about their best interest. If your best interest is what's most important to you, if that's what you care about, you're succeeding using psychology. Doesn't matter what techniques and tactics I teach you, you're not going to have any success, because you're not caring enough about them in order for them to feel that vibration of you caring. They have to sense that you care. That's one of the emotions we're going to talk about shortly. But then you also have to believe that what you're doing is right. You have to believe in your service. You have to believe in your product. You have to believe in your point of view. I was working with a politician right here in Dallas about 2 years ago. He's running for local office. And I said to him, don't get up in front. I can teach you all sorts of stuff, my friend, but don't get on that pedestal unless you really believe that your policies are going to help the local residents of this town, of this community. Don't get up there. And he says, I really believe that. Okay, because there's plenty of people that will sell stuff, convince people of things that they don't really believe it, right? So you have to believe it yourself. They'll pick up on it. The next must, you have to be, you must be humble and hungry. Humble enough to know I need to get better, but hungry to pursue how to get better. You could be humble and recognize I suck. I'm hurting here. I need to get help. I'm lousy. I'm not prideful enough to believe that I know it all. But then you've got to be hungry to pursue. I've met plenty of people that are hungry. They admit they're hurting, but they're not hungry to pursue what they have to in order to get better. You could be hungry also, but not be humble, and it won't work. You have to be humble, hungry to experience selling at a higher degree if you're going to incorporate psychology. The fourth, you must be intentional and intense. Get intense about getting better. Get intentional about getting better. If you're on this webinar today, it's because you're there, right? You're there. You're intentional and you're intense about getting better. Here's the fifth must. You must understand the power of predictability. So I'm going to dive a little bit now into the psychology. This is about as much of the micro psychology that I'll dive into for the sake of time and just for the sake of not having your heads explode with all the nerdy, geeky stuff that I appreciate a lot. But you must understand the power of predictability. Here's what I mean. There's good news and there's bad news to this point. The good news is that we're all wired the same. That's the good news. What does that mean? That means our brains are wired the same. The same wiring I have, unless there is a neurological issue, right? Or there's something that is developmentally concerned. We're not talking about that. Those are the situations where this particular statement doesn't fit. But most people, right, are in their right minds. If that's the case, and again, most people are, then you have to understand that we're wired the same. Our brains are all wired the same. That's good news. No one's brain is wired differently. But here's the flip side of that. Our wiring is the same, but our programming is different. So we're all wired the same, but our programming is different. And that's where the rubber meets the road, my friend. You have to become very good at recognizing the program of the person that is sitting in front of you. That mind that is sitting in front of you, you know the wiring, the brain is wired the same. That means there's predictability there. There is continuity there. There is a level of probability that exists among most people because the wiring is the same. What makes it different is the programming. And that programming that person has in their mind, in their brain, you're sitting in front of that, you're going to try to convince that your point of view, your product, your service is the direction they should go in. That person's programming, you need to know that programming. You need to learn how to work around that programming. And how is that programming developed? A number of ways. Here's the first way, environmental. What were they surrounded by? What were they exposed to? What are they continually exposed to? Has a lot to do with their programming. What do they read? What resources do they are they involved in? Has a lot to do with their programming. Who's talking in their ear? That has a lot to do with their programming. Their environment, their upbringing has a lot to do with their programming. And their programming, here's where the rubber meets the road, my friend. Their programming, all of those aspects of what programs a person, even though we're wired the same, programming is different. The ultimate result of how that person is programmed in a way that affects you and I as you're speaking to them is their temperament. What temperament does that person have that's sitting in front of me? Because if I don't know that, if I don't acknowledge it, if I don't recognize it, if I don't identify the temperament, I'm going to be speaking about things in left field and they are in right field and we're never going to meet. That's why oftentimes we think that the average salesperson, business owner, entrepreneur, parent, they think they're knocking out a pastor, preacher. They think they're knocking out of the box with some message or some presentation or proposal. And they think they've gotten through and they don't. Why? They were in left field and the person that they were talking to or that group they were addressing was in right field. You need to understand this. This is a must. But if you do, the good news is you can increase the probability of them saying yes, because at the end of the day, we're pretty predictable people once you know what works and how it works on the inside. Does that make sense? So let's take a look at the psychology of selling here. 5 critical elements of sales psychology. That's going to make a big difference in your business. Now, again, I'm giving you a high-level view for the sake of time, but I think that this high-level view will give you enough that you could certainly say to yourself, I need to learn more, okay? Here's the first thing, the very first critical element. The true decision maker is not who you think it is. Now, how do I know when someone who is in a propositional place, meaning they're making a proposal to somebody, whether it's a product, concept, joining their company? You know, an interviewer, I've been coaching and training a lot of interviewers, people that are interviewing candidates for openings at their jobs, which, by the way, in the past, this probably wasn't a need, but now more than ever, because of the great resignation and different dynamics that are happening today in the work world, interviewers have to be more skilled at interviewing, persuading, influencing, and convincing a strong candidate why that candidate should come work for them. So there's a selling that's going on there too. Even though the candidate is looking for a job, the interviewer sees a strong resume, a strong candidate, and they have to sell that candidate who has plenty of options why they should come work for them. Interesting dynamics, right? Well, I was coaching that particular HR firm, and one of the things I was telling them is that the decisions are made at the subconscious level. They're never made at the conscious level, and they couldn't understand what I was talking about because to them it was all academic. So let me share with you this. 10% of the decision a person makes happens at the conscious level, the cognitive level, the reasoning level, the rational level. Only 10%. 90% happens at the subconscious level. A person's decision is rooted from an experience and emotion, which we're going to get to next, that is stored away at the subconscious level. 90% of that decision is coming from the decision maker at the subconscious level. So why is that important for you? Because the novice, and I say that, I don't say that in a very disrespectful way. I say it in a way of not knowing. It has nothing to do with ambition and drive. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about skill set. The novice presenter or salesperson uses language that only appeals to the 10% decision maker. So let me ask you this. If you were aiming your resources at a target where you only had a 10% shot of hitting that target, you would revisit those tactics. You would revisit the resources. Because what chance do you have of getting anything to work in your favor when there's only 10% of that decision maker or 10% of that target is what you're aiming for? You wouldn't do that. But yet that's what most novice people do in terms of communication or persuasion or selling. They use language that only attracts the decision coming from 10% of the decision maker. And they bypass, because they don't know, the psychology of words and emotions, so they can really draw out the decision maker, which is at the subconscious mind. That's where the decision maker lies. We've all been there. Hey, if you were to take a self-assessment just on that alone right now, think about this for a minute. Any major decision you've made, and that's what I'm referring to here, guys, major decisions. I don't mean what am I going to have for dinner tonight or I'm going to go see a movie. I'm not talking about those kind of decisions. I mean pretty serious decisions. Right? What kind of product I'm going to buy, if I'm going to go to another company. Major decisions, pretty important decisions. Those are the ones I'm referring to. Well, think about whenever you've made a major decision in your life. Your decision probably wasn't academic at first. That was a small component of it, but it was more the feeling behind it, right? It was somewhat of an instinctual nature, intuition, right? It was very little of it had anything to do with the features of that decision. But it was all about what was happening at the subconscious level. If you think about any time you've made even who you've married and dated early on when you were dating, it was something that appealed to you based on the storehouse of emotions, experiences that you've accumulated over your lifetime at the subconscious level is what allowed you to make that decision. So we have to understand who we're talking to here. We're talking to the subconscious mind, not the conscious mind. And as a result of that, you have to take the second element to heart. Understand that emotions matter. in selling. We are emotionally based beings. We make decisions based on emotions. Now, we probably have heard that in the past, but it's vague, right? So what emotions really are the ones that we are appealing to? What emotions sit at the base of the subconscious mind that have to be triggered in order for that person to say yes, to be intrigued, to be fascinated, for you to lead them to action? What are the emotions? I'm going to give you three. Here's a good time to take notes. The first emotion that you have to trigger if you're going to utilize psychology and trigger that subconscious mind is the emotion that all of us experience. It's the drive that we cannot run away from because it's been in our wiring, sitting at the base of our primordial mind or the reptilian mind when we were just running around as underdeveloped beings. One of our primary concerns was being and keeping us safe. Safe. We make decisions primarily from a sense of safety. What's not going to harm me? What's not going to harm my family? What's going to bring me the greatest degree of safety? That is the biggest trigger in making a decision about anything important. Let me give an example of that. You buy a house. If say you're in real estate, and I've heard and have seen this example many, many times. Even when I did real estate years and years and years ago, I saw this. You can take a couple, a buyer, into a neighborhood, and there's a beautiful house, gorgeous house, priced perfectly. The buyers walk into the house and they just love it. It's exactly what they were looking for. But the buyer happens to go to the second floor, looks out the window, and they see by looking outside the window, little yonder, they see something they don't really like. They see some people hanging out. They see some shady characters. They see a couple of police cars more often than not, up and down. All of a sudden, what's going on in their minds? Not the beauty of the home, but the safety of the neighborhood. How safe am I going to be here? And oftentimes what happens? The buyer goes to the realtor and says, this is a beautiful home, but what else you got? It wasn't the home. It wasn't the academic component of it. It wasn't the feature of the pricing. It was they didn't feel safe. Hey, let me give you another example. Let's just use a human example. Guy's out. A girl is out with her girlfriend. She's single. And she is looking to maybe meet somebody nice. And all of a sudden, her girlfriends say, hey, look at that guy over there. Or maybe the girlfriends want to introduce her to someone that they know. And they say, oh, this guy's good looking. He's handsome. He's this, he's that. He's built. He has money and all this other stuff. And the girl says, that's nice. And she meets the guy. And all of a sudden, she's still not really sure about the guy. Yeah, outwardly, he's attractive, but she doesn't sense that he is going to provide her a measure of safety, a measure of validation, a measure of security. So she turns him down. But the girlfriends introduce her into another guy, and she says, her girlfriend said to her, oh, this guy, he treats people good. He's so nice. He's caring. He's loving. He's courteous. And on and on and on. That sense of safety will appeal more to that young woman to meet that guy other than everything else. Why? Because we want to feel safe. Whatever product, whatever you're selling, whatever you're offering, if it's not inducing in the other person's subconscious emotions, feeling of safety and no harm or very little risk, you're going to shoot yourself in the foot. You're going to be in left field. They're going to be in right field. Safety is the big play. Let me give you the second emotion. Certainty. People want to have a sense of certainty. What does certainty mean? They mean they're certain about the company. They're certain about you. They're certain that what you are promising is going to come to pass. We need to feel certain if we're going to move forward on making a decision. Uncertainty doesn't serve anyone's needs, especially when someone is making a major decision. So if you're using words or lack of words that are not drawing out the person's sense of certainty, you are shooting yourself in the foot. Let me give an example of that. Features versus benefits. In my current course, I have a course called Thrive Sales Mastery, which I dive into this in just grand extent, guys. This is just very light that we're covering here. But features versus benefits. Here's the mistake that people make when they're not really understanding psychology and the sense of certainty and the sense of safety that they must employ in their wording to draw out those emotions that can help them have more success with compliance. If you're offering a product, service, an opportunity, whatever you're offering, if you are focused on features of that product or whatever, again, you're marketing, features in and of itself are technical, they're tactical. They appeal to the 10% of the conscious mind, which is rational thinking. That's fun, but don't expect a decision just because you're spending a lot of time on features. People want to hear whether or not they say it, and they won't because they don't understand even how their own brain works, but you have to. They want to hear the benefits, and the benefits have nothing to do with the technical, tactical component of whatever you're offering. The benefits is how it's going to make them feel safe, certain. How are they going to feel? Is the company going to be there when they need it? Is this product going to be exactly what you said it's going to be? Am I going to experience what you're telling me I'm going to experience? How certain am I, based on what you're saying, that I'm going to have that experience? I need to feel certain. We are certain, wired creatures. We crave the known. We crave the certainty. It's not that we're not willing to take risk, but it's mitigated risk, because we will lean always towards what's certain. If you're telling me that this product is going to do this for me, I want to feel certain that it does. That's why people say, send me the brochure. That's why people say, send me whatever, send me the video, send me this, send me that. Why? And it's not just based on what you say. They want to feel certain about whatever it is you're offering. People want to feel safe, and they want to feel certain. And they'll join you if you can help them with that. And the last one is secure. There's many more emotions. I'm giving you the top 3 for today. Safe, certain, and secure. What does that mean, secure? It means that when I drive this car off the lot, I want to feel secure that if I get into an accident, everything you said that this car is going to do for me as a feature is going to, well, it's going to save I want to feel secure that it's going to protect and save my life and my kids' life if I get into an accident. They want to feel secure that things are going to work and that they work the way that you're promising them. If your language is not inducing a sense of security, certainty, and safety, you are shooting yourself in a proverbial sales foot, because none of the features you're talking about is not going to resonate with them the way that it can. Very important to know that these are the emotions sitting at the subconscious mind that will help somebody say yes more than your rational reasoning of why they should say yes, because you're addressing the conscious mind. Does that make sense? Let's talk about congruency is essential. And I'll take 2 minutes on this, and then we'll stop, and then we'll go through some questions and comments and so on. Why is congruency important in psychology of selling? Let me make sure you guys understand what I'm saying about congruency. Everything has to line up for the brain, for that mind to say, okay. If you're talking about a high-end ticket product, let's say you're selling luxury, I'm going to use just luxury real estate just for simplicity. But if you're selling luxury real estate and you have the talk and you have everything else going on, but you don't look the part, there's no congruency. If you are a professional executive, but when someone goes and checks you out on your social media page and they see someone very different from the person who's in front of them trying to convince them to say yes to their proposal, there's no congruency there. If you're dressed up like $1 million and you're working for a fantastic company and the product is great, but your language is a language that is inducing doubt and lack of certainty, there's no congruency there. If you're vibing to them that you aren't really looking out for their best interest, you're trying to promote something that could be in your best interest, there's no congruency there. If you don't believe in what you're offering, I said this earlier, if you don't believe in what you're offering, you know that you emanate a vibration of belief. If you are certain and sure that what you're offering to somebody else, you're vibrating a sense of a frequency that they resonate, they pick up on that. We're vibrational beings, whether you understand that or not, and that's a conversation for another day. We're vibrational beings. We pick up on each other's vibes. You ever go into the room, or maybe run into a friend, and you know within a few minutes something ain't right? They could be saying things are great, but something ain't right. We pick up on their vibes. People had that experience, right? We're vibrational beings. So if you're operating at a low frequency, people pick it up. So congruency is important. If you believe in what you're doing and you are 100% certain, because your vibrations are strong and very influential, they'll pick up on it. Congruency is essential. Any one of those missing components, and you're shortchanging the probability of that individual saying yes. And the last is, well, the last for this one, I think we'll have time. Oh, sorry about that. The last one is verbal imagery. Sorry about that, guys. The use of verbal imagery. I'm going to give you one word here. One word, imagine. In one of my books, I talk about using verbal imagery. What words can you use that seep into the subconscious mind and grab a hold of them? I tell people oftentimes that you do have the capacity to operate like a Jedi. Do Jedi mind tricks. If you're a fan of Star Wars, that's where the whole Jedi comes in. Well, Jedi mind tricks. You and I have the power to utilize Jedi mind tricks in a good way, in a healthy way, in a way that benefits other people, that can help that person realize the value of what you're proposing just by using verbal imagery. And I'm going to give you one word. Imagine. There's a powerful word that you can use whenever you want to get into someone's subconscious mind, and you can do that immediately. Here's one thing you need to know. Of the many gifts that we've been blessed with, one of those gifts that we've been blessed with and wired with, all of us, this is what I said earlier, we're all wired the same way, is the gift of imagination. The gift of imagination. It doesn't take much for all of us to have one word, one phrase, one thought, one story, one picture be given to us, and we can create a full-length feature film right in here. Isn't that true? I could say to you, boom, and your subconscious mind and your imagination is off to the races, creating a full-length feature film. And here's what's important about that. You sell yourself on the film being real. You take a nonfiction, a fiction, and turn it into nonfiction in your own head. Well, that's important. Just with one word, imagine. So here's how we can utilize that in my business, in your business. Let's say you're having a conversation with someone and you really want them to see the value of what you're doing. And I'm going to use something like a very simple car, right? Just as an example, a little simple illustration, car. And I'm a car sales professional and you're the buyer. You're the shopper. I'm going to say to you, John, I want you to imagine. And then I'm going to pause. Why a pause is important. Not an awkward pause, a tactful pause. John, I want you to imagine. See that? I'm imagining. By the way, they're going to mimic that. That's body language. I want you to imagine, like you're imagining. They're going to imagine. The subconscious mind now is paying attention because the subconscious mind wants the direction of what am I going to listen to? What am I going to imagine? Tell me what I want to hear. Tell me what I want to see. Give me an instruction. Give me something I can think about. Right? The subconscious mind is ready for instruction. So, John, I want you to imagine that you pull up to your driveway with this brand new car and all your neighbors are watching you pull in and your friends at work are watching you. They say, hey, wow, this guy must be successful. Wow, look at this guy, brand new car, huh? Imagine how many people are gonna say to you, it's a nice car, John. And they're gonna walk away, drive away thinking, oh, John's really doing all right. He's really making, he must be successful. Don't think for a minute that if you're selling that car to that person, and again, I'm just giving you one example. that that person in their mind isn't imagining what you just said, because the minute you told that subconscious mind, I want you to imagine, it cannot not imagine. If I said to you right now, I want you to imagine that an elephant just crashed your front house, your front door, a big old elephant just got loose and it crashed your front door. How many of you could not see that image? There's power in verbal imagery, and that's just one of many you can use. The last part here is I want to share with you is and we'll wrap up here, is the body language of sales masters, those who really have incorporated psychology and understand that it's not just what you say, because that matters, it's how you say it that matters even more. So what you say matters, but how you say it matters even more. Both of them combined makes you very powerful in being able to really penetrate the subconscious, also utilize psychology to your advantage. But body language is important. Let me give you one body language that's critical. There's many of them in terms of how do you use psychology with nonverbal communication. Nonverbal communication. Let me give you them. And if you see this, you're going to see what I mean. I'm not going to use any words. I'm just going to do mime, but you'll see what I'm saying. Okay. Now, you can write in the chat, what was I really saying? No words. If I'm speaking with you and I'm trying to engage you in my proposal, if I'm just selling something to you, I want to convince you, persuade you, influence you to say yes to my proposal. If I don't use any words, but I go like this, what conclusion are you jumping at the subconscious level? The psychology says this guy's really heartfelt, right? And I don't know if we don't have time for you to get into all that in the chat box right now, but you have to probably jump to that conclusion that whatever he's saying, he's touching his heart, must be something emotional, something meaningful. This is a powerful body language gesture. And now I'm going to use words. If I'm speaking to Linda and I say, Linda, I really believe that this is the best thing for you. Linda, this is the best thing for you. I couldn't think of anything else more important. Watch the hands. I couldn't think of anything else more important that will serve you. I mean that. See how powerful that is? You're not speaking to the conscious mind. You're speaking to the decision maker. Here's what the hands up means. Transparent. I got nothing to hide. Palms up, indication, I got nothing to hide. The cognitive mind won't pick up on that, but the subconscious mind will. Hands up. Linda, I got to be honest with you. I really believe that what I'm proposing is the best thing for you. The best thing for you, Linda. Two other things I'm using, the word you and the word Linda. Very powerful. Hands up, hands on the heart, you and the name of the person. Whew. Works. Jedi stuff. I want to stop here, but if I could...